welcome to another Commodore 64 compilation comparison video, and in this one I'm going to be taking a look at a compilation chosen by you guys, my subscribers and viewers. I gave you the choice of 3 different budget compilations and you voted for, with a score of 41% or 41% of the votes, this one, Pack of Aces, which was released in 1990, at least this version of it was, with a retail price, I believe, of £3.99. I'll get into that a little bit later. As you can see, it's got 4 games on it, all re-releases of full price games. This one might do quite well. Is it a pack of aces? Let's find out. Before I take a look at the packaging for this one, I just want to mention that my good friend Gordon Sinclair, aka Sir Clive, watched all my Commodore 64 compilation comparison videos recently and was inspired to do his own version for one of the rival computers of the 8-bit era, the ZX Spectrum. So he launched that series on YouTube a few weeks ago, the ZX Spectrum Compilation Chart Challenge. And you thought the name of my series was a mouthful. So there's a few episodes of that already available on his channel. I do recommend you go and check them out. It's a pretty similar format to my videos, so if you enjoy mine, you're going to enjoy his too. Even if you weren't a Spectrum fan back in the day, which I wasn't, I still think it's a good watch. And if you are a Spectrum fan, it's going to be even more fun for you than this series is. I'll put a link to Gordon's channel in a pinned comment on this video. So let's now take a look at the packaging for Pack of Aces, but first I want to elaborate on what I was talking about the release date and price for this. There was actually an earlier version of this compilation release which was in a double cassette size box, and that was released in I think 1987, and I believe that had a retail price of £4.99, but this one was definitely released in 1990, I'll explain why in a minute, and from what I can tell from looking at magazine information, this did retail at £3.99, so it does qualify as a budget compilation by my rules. So anyway, let's take a look at it in closer detail. As you can see, pretty plain packaging. It's got a black packaging with a gold border around it. It says Pack of Aces Commodore 64 at the top. It's got the cover art for 3 of the games. It's a bit weird this. So you've got International Karate, Boulder Dash and Who Dares Wins 2. It's got the original cover art for those. And then for Nexus, the 4th game, it says Nexus, but then it's got a screenshot. And at the bottom you can see it says 4 great games on 1 tape. So let's take a look at the spine. Very plain again, just red text on the black background. And on the back cover, again, you've got some red text at the top there. You've got a bit of a write-up for the 4 games and also a screenshot, so pretty good, but the overall layout design is very simplistic. It doesn't really grab you. It's a bit sort of bare bones. And you can see at the bottom here, Paxman Promotions and also Prism Leisure. So Prism Leisure was the company that released this, but Paxman Promotions was a distribution company or name that they used to promote these compilations for some reason. I don't really know why. So here's a little look at the cassette. As you can see, very plain again, just a black cassette with the bare minimum of information printed on it. Doesn't even tell you which games are on which side, but what it does tell you is that this was a 1990 release because it's got the copyright information there at the bottom. Also mentioned there of Paxman Promotions and Prism Leisure. So inside the inlay, again, as I was saying, bare bones, there's nothing, it's just completely blank, so that's not good. But on the flip side, the instructions, pretty comprehensive. So you've got, this is multi-platform instructions, so you've got all the information for the C64, Amstrad and Spectrum in English, French and German. So there's a lot packed into here, and as a result, the font size is minuscule. Very difficult to read, but you've got lots of information there. International Karate, it's got the background for the game and all the controls and the different moves. Boulder Dash has got quite a bit of information as well. Who Dares Wins 2, not so much, because it's a pretty straightforward game, I suppose. And then on the opposite side, there's a bit more about Who Dares Wins 2, but then a huge amount of information about Nexus, which I've never played before. The other 3 games I have, to some extent. Nexus I've never played before. That looks like it's going to be quite an in-depth game based on all that information, but as a reminder, there is French, English and German translations of the information there, so it's not quite as bad as it looks. So there we go, that's the packaging of the game. There's no adverts or anything like that available for this one, so let's get started and take a look at the first game. First up we have International Karate, originally released in 1986 by System 3, although if you're an American viewer of this video, you might recognise this as World Karate Championship, which was published in the US by Epix. International Karate is a simulation where 1 or 2 players can compete against each other or the computer. Depending on your level of skill, you'll fly around the world to 8 different international locations competing in a karate tournament. You'll also have to compete in 2 special rounds, dodging various weapons and smashing a stack of tiles with your head. You have more than a dozen moves at your disposal, including punches, kicks, leg sweeps and somersaults. At all stages of the game you'll be watched over by a wise old judge who will make decisions and award points accordingly. Each round lasts a maximum of 30 seconds, during which you'll have to try and gain 2 points. Depending on how successful a hit has been, the judge will award you either half a point or a full point. Score 2 points and you've won the round. As you fight your way up through the various levels, you'll be awarded a belt colour, and high achievers can enter their initials in the Hall of Fame. The original release of this game came with 2 separate programs to load from the cassette, each having its own set of backdrops. I haven't checked, but I'm going to guess that only one of those made it onto this budget compilation. I may as well kick off my review of the game by talking about those backgrounds, which are very well drawn with great variety in the scenery, featuring everything from cityscapes to ancient ruins. The character graphics are also really well done, with fantastic animation and smooth movement as you transition from one move to another. There's also a great SID tune that fits the game well, though it would later be remixed into an even better one for this game's sequel. Gameplay is pretty standard for these mid-80s karate games, as you have to score 2 full points against your opponent to defeat them. There is an element of strategy though, as you can go for the quick win and earn more points for remaining time, or try and get a couple of hits in, then hold off until time runs out to allow sure progression to the next round. The game is a high score challenge in essence though, so it makes more sense to try and win quick with high impact moves. I did think it was odd that belt progression is achieved by score though. It would make more sense to be done by rounds won, but I guess that method differentiates the game from others in this genre. Another way to earn big points is by completing the minigames, with the board smashing one being an amusing diversion that can be won by some joystick waggling. There are lots of attacks at your disposal, but there's not much room for error and it can be hard to hit opponents sometimes. Personally, I couldn't get used to the controls because I'm so used to playing Way of the Exploding Fist, so I kept trying to do leg sweeps but ended up turning around and punching instead. I think the variety of moves is possibly slightly better than in Fist, but it does feel harder to execute them. The game is of course limited by modern standards and gets tough pretty quickly, but it would have been a great 2-player experience at the time. It would of course be hugely surpassed by its sequel IK+, but it's still a very good karate game in its own right. Next up we have an early classic from the C64 lineup, Boulder Dash, originally released in 1984 by First Star Software. The objective of the game is to guide Rockford and search through each cave to collect as many jewels in as short a time as possible. Once the indicated number of jewels have been collected, the door to the mysterious escape tunnel is revealed and you can go to the next level. Strategy and planning will help you master the physics of Boulder Dash. Boulders drop predictably enough, but you and Rockford also have to block growing amoebas, transform butterflies, outmaneuver fireflies and overcome other obstacles. You start the game with 3 chances and bonus tries are awarded after every 500 points. The tunnels created by Rockford will shimmer when you're awarded a bonus try. A bonus is also awarded by completing a playable intermission, which appears after every 4 caves. There are 16 caves in total to overcome, each comprising of several scrolling screens and numbered A to P. Each cave has 5 difficulty levels which can be selected from the menu screen before the game starts. The greater the difficulty, the less time you have and the more jewels you have to collect. Now I have to admit this is really the first time I've played the original Boulder Dash properly. As I'm sure you know, I grew up with a BBC Micro, so I'm more of a Repton guy. Anyway, the graphics and sound are very much of their time, with the former being simple and lacking in variety, but Rockford is cute, fitting a lot of personality into a compact sprite. Sound-wise, there are just a few primitive spot effects in-game, but there is a pleasant tune on the title screen, though it isn't exploiting the SID chip's capabilities by any means. That title screen features lots of options, including difficulty and starting level, but you can only choose certain levels to begin on. It would have been better if you could start on any level you've previously reached, as playing the early ones again soon gets boring. The first 2 levels are easy enough to get past, but then the difficulty ramps up on stage 3. The time limit is pretty strict on that one, so you have to move fast and that can lead to mistakes, especially as this is the first level that really introduces you to the concept that rocks will slide off the brick wall elements. You also don't know where the exit's going to be when you first play, so it needs some trial and error to work out the best way around, which isn't helped by that time limit. Level 4 is no easier as you have to destroy the butterflies to earn enough diamonds to finish the level, and it's possible to do that in a way that doesn't give you all the ones you need. Most mistakes will lead to losing a life and a complete reset of the level to try again. There are other niggles too, like being killed if diamonds fall on you, which seems unfair, and the semi-flick screen scrolling can make it tricky to see what's coming up or where you need to go next. A map overview screen as Repton had would certainly help with the more complex levels. As I said, I've never played the game properly before, and to be honest, I found it pretty frustrating. I do acknowledge it as a classic genre-defining game, but I wasn't massively impressed. It does have an addictive one more go factor to it though, so perhaps I'd become more enamoured with it if I played it for longer. It's that time again where I say thank you to all my channel members, whose names you can see here in my Supporters Hall of Fame. If you're enjoying this video and would like to join these fine folks and support my efforts, why not become a member yourself? For a monthly fee starting from just 99p, you can get access to the special membership perks shown on screen, and more besides. If you're interested, then please click on the join button below this video for more information. If you're not able to commit to a monthly contribution but would still like to support my channel, then you could also give a super thanks. This one-off donation gives you a highlighted comment on whichever video you choose to click the button on, and anyone doing this will also get a shout out from me on a subsequent video. The super thanks button can be found below every video I produce. You can also help raise the profile of this channel by liking this video and leaving a comment, which helps improve my ranking in the mysterious YouTube algorithm. Any support you can give, financial or otherwise, is greatly appreciated. Let's move on to the third game on this compilation. This is Who Dares Wins 2, originally published in 1985 by Alligator Software. Only the bravest volunteer for the ultimate suicide mission to free lost compatriots held prisoner by the armies of death, the forces of oppression. Only the fearless dare take up a challenge where courage and endurance are as essential as intelligence and skill. Armed at the outset with an automatic rifle and 5 grenades, you must make your way forward into enemy territory, where the opposing battalions are entrenched in occupied townships and the surrounding districts. The occupation army has formed itself into garrisons, where they hold prisoners from your own patriotic forces. You must press onward through the first garrison, avoiding enemy snipers and hidden obstacles on the way, until you're confronted by the walled compound from which will pour the defending troops. Kill off this attack and you gain entry to the next sector of the enemy territory, and on you must battle, clearing your way to the final garrison in the 8th territory, where victory should be yours. Your grenades can be replenished from randomly dropped ammunition boxes, and if you free a prisoner from execution you'll earn a high bonus. This is a pretty obvious clone of the arcade game Commando, so much so in fact that the first version of the game was removed from sale following legal action from Elite Systems, who published the official port of Capcom's game. That's why the game was redesigned and ultimately released as Who Dares Wins 2. Graphically, it's a mixed bag. The player and enemy sprites look good, and there's more variety in enemies than in Commando, but while the scenery elements are pretty well drawn, the drab, washed out colour choices are disappointing. Sound-wise, it's not up to much either, with sparse in-game effects, though it does have a reasonable rendition of the Great Escape theme on the title screen. Gameplay is your standard run and gun affair, but this is generally easier than Commando. Movement of your soldier is pretty slow, as is the scrolling, but enemies tend to wander around randomly rather than home in on you, so are pretty easy to avoid and pick off. There are lots of bullets flying around though, so you still need to be cautious. There are a couple of neat touches in the game, such as being able to save hostages from a firing squad, as long as you do it quickly enough, and the enemy soldier death animations are quite funny. There are also annoyances though, like the quicksand being very hard to spot, and it is a shame you can't go into any of the water. The regular grenade drops are welcome, but holding down fire to throw them can result in you throwing more than one and wasting them, and there are areas that you'll find hard to pass without them. In summary, while there are pros and cons to the game, it was a decent alternative to Commando at the time, it's still well playable now, and probably offers more longevity than the C64 conversion of the Capcom game, which was notoriously short. The fourth and final game on the compilation is Nexus, originally published in 1986 by Nexus Productions. You play the role of an experienced journalist working for the Clarion newspaper. Your experience covers both journalism and survival skills. One day your editor summons you to an urgent conference, saying a friend of yours was investigating a drugs racket in Colombia and had just learned that he's been kidnapped by the drugs baron. You're tasked with infiltrating the drug lord's complex, rescuing your friends and getting a scoop story. The editor gives you a file which contains 32 rumours about the drugs ring's activities. The answers to these rumours are found in the game, and each takes the form of a sentence. Each sentence is divided into 4 parts, so there are 128 parts in all. Whenever you enter a room within the complex, you can search for information, and you do this by placing the character alongside an object. Push up on the joystick, and when you've discovered parts of the answers to the editor's questions, you can go in search of the editing terminal, where you can edit the parts of the rooms into entire sentences to create the 32 answers. These can then be transmitted back to the editor via a terminal in the transmission room. When you land on the subterranean beach at the start of the game, you'll meet Tony, a member of Nexus, a group of undercover agents working to break the drugs ring from the inside. Tony and his friends will help you by providing new weapons, skills and vital information. At the time it was released, Nexus was a very ambitious game, with a large complex to explore at will, multiple objectives and many characters to interact with. The graphics are decent, with some nice animation on the characters as they move around, and some variety in the backgrounds, though it does eventually get samey as you move around the base. The area where the action takes place is actually quite small, occupying the upper third of the screen. Below that is a massive status panel containing loads of information that is quite hard to keep track of. The map is good, but the radar view of the floor you're on is almost useless. The panel also shows digitised faces representing the Nexus members, which aren't bad given the C64's limited colours and resolution. Several tunes accompany the action, and while there's nothing that really showcases the SID chip, they are atmospheric and not too repetitive given how long the game can last. Gameplay definitely has its plus and minus points. The controls are complex, and you'll probably need to refer to the instructions frequently to remember them all. There is a clever mechanism that allows you to perform multiple actions from a single direction on the joystick, but again, memorising all this is going to be a challenge. There's a huge number of rooms to investigate for weapons and clues, which gives the game similarities to the classic Impossible Mission. Like that game, it can get boring searching loads of objects, but eventually I worked out that there's only ever one rumour section to find in each room, and it's always in the first object you search, no matter which one you search first, so that does speed things up. A really helpful touch though is that the doors of searched rooms switch from green to red, so that stops you having to revisit them. Hand-to-hand combat is difficult, and you just seem to get knocked over a lot, but it won't take you long before you find a gun or grenades, which make life a lot easier. Unfortunately, enemies can only be stunned, which means you have to continually fend them off when you get into the more restricted areas. Interaction with other characters is also not easy due to that complex control scheme. You can try and initiate conversations, but sometimes end up hitting them or not get much interaction at all. Some characters give you passcards, but it's not really clear which ones are useful or where they're to be used. The most confusing aspect of the game, at least to begin with, is the way your position in a long corridor is reset every time you stop moving. Typically, you'll seemingly get pushed back to the left or right hand side of the screen, with the scenery relocating with you, but it's not 100% consistent. Sometimes you'll reach the end of a corridor and get a flick screen to another area, so I don't know why the programmer didn't just do that all the time. Another bugbear is just how long it takes sometimes for lifts to arrive at the floor you're on. This is fine if the area is clear of enemies, but if you get caught up in a fight, you usually have to call the lift again and wait even longer. There's also inconsistency when you eventually get caught by the bad guys. Sometimes you get imprisoned and the game just ends, while other times you're let out and can continue. The instructions mention that this depends on how much you've been cooperating with the Nexus agents, but it just seemed random to me. It does have a fairly forgiving difficulty level, so there's plenty of opportunity to get into the game if you wanted to, though I played for a good while and didn't seem to make a lot of progress. There's the potential for hours of gameplay here though, which makes the ability to save the game very welcome. The flaws in the controls and user interface and the tedium of searching all those rooms may not make you want to keep at it for long, however. So that does it for looking at the 4 games that comprise the pack of aces. Are they all ace? I'll get onto that momentarily, but this is a really solid collection of games covering a variety of genres. They were all getting on a bit by the time this collection was released in 1990, but if you were a late adopter of the C64 or missed them first time around, 3 of them were highly recognisable titles, and the chance to pick them up for a budget price would definitely be appealing. I'll now rate this compilation, firstly by giving each game an individual score, and then come up with an overall compilation rating that takes the packaging and value for money into account. So kicking things off was International Karate, which is an excellent one-on-one karate game with lovely visuals, slick animation and a great soundtrack. It is limited by later fighting game standards and was surpassed by its more well-known sequel, but is still a solid game and just about the best on this collection in my opinion. I'm going to score it 7 out of 10. Boulder Dash is a bona fide classic on the C64 and the innovator of a genre, but the gameplay can be frustratingly difficult and it's nothing special to look at. For its long-term impact though, it still deserves a score of 7. Who Dares Wins 2 is a blatant clone of Commando, but actually a more enjoyable and long-lasting alternative due to its slower pace and lower difficulty level. That scenery is depressingly drab though. Nevertheless, this is another game that deserves 7 out of 10 by my reckoning. And finally we had Nexus. The least familiar and most complex game in the pack, it offers a huge amount of exploration and depth for this era. It is hampered by overcomplicated controls and a puzzling user interface, but it's still worth a look if you've never seen it before. It is the weakest game on the compilation, but not by much, so I'm going to give it a score of 6. So moving on to the overall compilation ranking, and firstly the packaging, well, the inlay and cassettes scream low budget quality wise, but to be fair, there are game descriptions and screenshots on the back, and the instruction sheet is very comprehensive, even if you do need a magnifying glass to read it. Consequently, I'm going to score it 6 out of 10. The scores for the 4 games average out at 6.75, and that leaves value for money. With 3 very well known and highly regarded games, plus one intriguing lesser known one for under £4, this would have been a no-brainer for anyone looking for a good quality compilation in 1990, even if it looks a bit shabby at first glance. If you couldn't get a quid's worth of value out of each of these games, then you'd have to question if you should be gaming at all. I therefore have no qualms about giving this a value for money score of 10 out of 10. All that means that the overall compilation rating for Pack of Aces comes out at 73%. Being a relatively late low budget release, there were no magazine reviews for this compilation that I could find. I very much doubt it was sent to any of them to be reviewed, to be honest. So that means we can move swiftly on to seeing where Pack of Aces features in my compilation league tables, and let's take a look at the budget compilation rankings first, where its score of 73% has put it straight in at number 1. I completely expected this, to be honest. When you look at the 4 games on offer, it was always going to rank highly. You could probably argue that it's a little bit unfair to be comparing it to budget compilations from the likes of Atlantis and Codemasters, but there have been other compilations of re-releases at budget price that feature in this table, and none of them did as well as this. It's also going to take something extra special to knock this off the top of the table, I imagine. We could be seeing it there for a very long time. Moving on to the combined rankings that also feature full price titles, Pack of Aces has gone in at a very respectable 6th place, with its 73% putting it level with US Gold's Giants, and above Konami coin-op hits that I reviewed last time around. It is obviously helped by that 10 out of 10 value for money score, but even as a full price compilation this would have ranked highly. It also means that this combined compilation league table is going to feature at least one budget compilation for a good while yet, maintaining its relevance. That just about brings this episode to a close, except for me to ask you guys, what did you think of this compilation and the 4 games it contained? I imagine many of you are familiar with 3 of them, but has anyone played Nexus before? Please leave a comment and let me know, and if you enjoyed this video, I appreciate you giving it a thumbs up. It's worth noting that the last 3 compilations I've reviewed in this series, Dizzy's Excellent Adventures, Konami coin-op hits and now Pack of Aces, have all featured in the league table you're looking at right now, so I'm on a pretty good roll at the moment. Will that continue next time around? Well, join me in a few weeks' time to find out. Until then, please stay tuned to this channel for other retro gaming content. Thanks very much for watching this video, and until the next time, see ya!